If you enjoy listening, and welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of Gamecock.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! Ball is batted and gone. Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kaye. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Plays it in at the buzzer! That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, good morning and welcome to Gamecock Pod Live for July the 24th, episode number 1528. We've got a great show lined up for you. I don't know if you can see, but I'm on my Route 66 shirt in Gamecock colors. Couldn't dig it out of the luggage in time last week, but we got it today. And we have also got John Whittle, who was sick last week and unable to be with us. He will join the show in just a few minutes. And then the second half of the show, Jordan Kaye from GoGamecocks.com in the state will join us to recap a little bit of his experience in Dallas at SEC Media Days. But let's get right into it and jump into our Nana's Porch news, notes, and highlights brought to you by the award-winning full-service catering company, Nana's Porch, your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, or a big backyard bash with the whole hog barbecue, which would be great for a watch party in the fall. Nana's Porch has got you covered. If you have an event that requires a food trailer, Nana's Porch voted among the top 3 food trailers in Charlotte by the local newspaper poll, so you know it's good. And the award-winning pimento cheese voted both number 1 and number 2 in the meat and cheese category by the North Carolina Specialty Foods Association, with my personal favorite, the smoky jalapeno, coming in at number 1. So I strongly urge you to support this Gamecock-owned and operated business that services the greater Charlotte, Fort Mill, Rock Hill, Lancaster area by going to nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. You'll love it. I guarantee it. Get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne, and they will take care of all your catering needs, as I struggle to type in the chat box. All right, so we start the show with some sad news. Former South Carolina Athletic Director Bob Markham passed away yesterday at the age of 87. Markham's career spanned over 40 years. He was just recently hospitalized after suffering a stroke. His first AD job was at the University of Kansas from 1978 to 1982. That's when he ran across a brash Marlboro Red smoking former NFL great turned head coach at New Mexico named Joe Morrison. When Markham came to South Carolina, one of his first acts was to handle the football situation He wanted to bring Morrison with him, but Morrison had a great team coming back and said, give me one more year. So South Carolina, which had fired the university president, James Holderman, had fired Jim Carlin. They promoted Richard Bell. That was only going to be a one-year deal unless he won big. Markham responsible after South Carolina went 4-7 for firing Richard Bell and bringing in the man in black who led South Carolina at that time in 1984 to their greatest season in school history with a 10-1 regular season. And the thing about it was probably lost to the second worst team on the schedule and could have played for the national championship. But Markham remained South Carolina's athletic director until 1988. He resigned amid the steroid scandal, became president of the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and then went to UMass. And at UMass, he hired a guy named John Calipari. And Markham led UMass to 4 Atlantic 10 conference championships alongside Coach Cal. Their only 2 division national championship in football, and was on hand for the first 2 NCAA tournament berths for women's basketball ever at UMass. He was inducted into the UMass Hall of Fame. After he left there, he went back to his alma mater, which was Marshall, the Thundering Herd. Arguably his greatest accomplishment at Marshall saw them join the new Conference USA in 2005, which increased revenue and led to greater exposure and increased competition across the athletics department. Bob Markham was just a regular guy. He was not an egomaniac. He would come down in basketball games and sit with the students. In fact, I got to sit next to him, Chris Lee, and myself on more than one occasion in the student section at a Gamecock basketball game. And so rest in peace, Bob Markham, and our thoughts and prayers are definitely with his family. John Calipari took to the app formerly known as Twitter and said, Bob Markham passed away this morning. This tweet was from last night. He and I had a couple of hours in the hospital, talked about our time together at UMass. He is AD and me as his coach. We laughed, cried, and prayed. He had on the Kentucky 2012 national championship ring. He was part of everything we accomplished and shared in our joy and in our misery. He impacted many and will be missed, especially by Ellen and me. R.I.P., my loyal friend. All right, South Carolina's, of course, we all know what happened then. King Dixon, don't get me started on that. All right, so Lamont Paris has offered another 2025 big man, 6'8", 240-pound power forward, Zakiya Mikey Williams of the Christ School. He is a national top 100 player. That offer went out earlier this week. Gamecock women's basketball newcomers, Maddie McDaniel, Joyce Edwards, and Miriam Dowda, they met with the media yesterday. That's all on the South Carolina YouTube page, and great summations by them, and they did a tremendous job. Certainly, you know, what a great recruiting class. So as it turns out, Dawn Staley will be a part of the United States Olympic delegation that will be with the First Lady of the United States in the Paris Olympics. Staley, a 3-time Olympic gold medalist, also led Team USA to a gold medal as head coach. And in the 2004 Olympics, she was the flag bearer for the United States. I'll have some more news notes and headlines, maybe in between guests, but and I'll have mostly women's basketball recruiting. But let's go ahead and bring in our good friend John Whittle, go out on the Nana's Porch guest line. If you got questions for John on baseball, Gamecock football, or Whit Merrifield, jump right in. John, good morning. It's great to see you. I'm sure you got a lot better color in your face and are feeling a lot better this morning than what you described to me about last week.
Yeah, last week, I don't know what happened to me, but last week was a little tough, but doing okay today. So happy to be on with you.
It's always our pleasure to have you. And so I got to ask, the Braves acquire Whit Merrifield, and he gets injured the first day. Is Jeff Dillman the strength coach for the Atlanta Braves?
I tell you what, this some freak injuries going on over there, I guess. I was very shocked to hear that for Whit, but I didn't see if he was in the lineup last night or if he's good to go. I know he was day-to-day, but hopefully he can get in there real soon.
Yeah, he took a ground ball that took a weird hop off a finger, and I don't think he's played as of yet. But yeah, I am very happy for him. And look, he was an all-star last year. I don't know what happened. I guess when he went from Kansas City to Toronto, his contract ran out, but he was an all-star last year, was signed in the offseason by the Phillies, and then they just let him go. And I think it's great because the Braves have now several young players in that clubhouse. It's great to have a veteran and a national champion and an all-star in that dugout.
Yeah, 3-time All-Star, including last year. I mean, I know it started kind of falling apart for him towards the end of last season and wasn't able to get going this year. So hopefully he can find his footing a little bit with the Braves and be helpful with their run this season.
All right, so you brought everybody's news to or attention to this bit of news yesterday. Notorious Gamecock hater on X, Bud Elliott, picks South Carolina as one of the top 5 most improved offensive lines in the country for 2024. In order, he had South Carolina, Colorado, TCU, Cincinnati, and then Ole Miss. Is this a kiss of death, or does he actually know what he's talking about?
Well, I think he's sliding out on a pretty sturdy limb there to say that South Carolina is going to be improved. But, you know, and that's what anybody would say. You know, I took it to mean like most improved as in like they're going to make the most significant jump out of any offensive line in the country with the way he kind of ranked them and sorted them. Usually if you are just putting together a list and don't mean it for it to be in order, you alphabetize it or something like that. But so I took it to mean that it's going to be the biggest jump out of any group in the country, which is obviously a really bold statement. South Carolina's got South Carolina had to be right at or near the bottom of any team in the country, much less in the SEC when it came to offensive line. And some of it was talent issue. A lot of it was injury issue. But you know, it's South Carolina's got some guys who are on the second string on the depth chart who have been longtime starters. So, you know, it's I mean, they've got some talent in there now. They've got some depth. So I feel like the line is in a much better place to be successful.
No doubt about it. All right, so let's talk a little football, and then we'll switch gears to Gamecock basketball. So I've really enjoyed reading your countdown to fall camp features.
Nope.
Seems like it's been
Nope, Keith, we're not going any further. It ain't fall. There's nothing about fall that's going on right now in Columbia, South Carolina. It's not fall camp. Call it preseason camp. Call it whatever you want. Don't call it fall. It's 99 degrees. It's July. The camp starts in August. The fall semester of school has not started. There's nothing fall about it.
All right, so
get that out of your vocabulary.
All right, thank you. Look, I spent 2 summer schools as an undergraduate at South Carolina. Columbia was built directly above the 7th level of hell. It is the hottest, most humid place I've ever been. So we'll say preseason.
There we go.
How about let's use the Will Muschamp countdown to training camp.
There we go. Training camp works. Training camp works. Preseason camp, whatever. Just not fall.
All right. So what's I've enjoyed. I think it's been a very popular feature. What have been your most the fun things about doing it? And have you learned anything, or has it just maybe shifted your attention to something? I mean,
it's really done to generate conversation, right? And get people to think about some things. You look at, a newcomer, and we all talk about them, and you look at, which means you kind of forget the old guys, which, sometimes those are good to remind people about. So I do that too. But, when it beyond that, like, everybody's got question marks going into a season. And, I'm not necessarily like trying to pick, like, is South Carolina going to run more of the 3-4 defense this year, or more of the 4-2-5? Like, that's something we don't really have an answer to. But like today, it was just kind of talking about, like, what's Juju gonna do this year? Like, he's an old guy, veteran on the team. He was at one time the starting running back. He was an all SEC freshman player. Like, he only played 90 plays last year, and only 36 of them were in SEC play. Like, that's something interesting to talk about. Like, you've got Rocket Sanders, you've got Oscar Adway, you got, DJ Braswell, you got Jawarn Howell, Michael Fuller, Matthew Fuller coming in. Where does he fit? Like, are you gonna have a few gadget plays for him? Is he gonna be mainly special teams? Like, there's just so much to talk about. But maybe I'm just misperceiving things. But I do feel like there is not as much optimism going into this season as typical. And I want to be sure to point out some reasons for folks to be optimistic. And today it was they brought back, South Carolina was terrible last year, and one as bad as I've ever seen South Carolina be in terms of playing behind the line of scrimmage, creating some havoc plays, doing that kind of thing. But South Carolina brings back its 2 best players from that standpoint from last year's team, and added some guys who are really good in that category from the college ranks. Also at different positions too. So, and then they bring in that 5-star pass rush guy who might end up being a little decent in Dylan Stewart. So, it's been a lot of fun to kind of explore some of those things and talk about them a little bit on the message board. And today is 9 days away.
It is 9 days away. And, here on the pod, I did one pod with the 5 biggest question marks for South Carolina. And then I did one with, it was really 5 plus 1, because the plus 1 was Kai Kroger, who, a lot of people forget last year went into the year injured, didn't know if he would be available for the first game. He kind of rushed back. But to me, there's no doubt South Carolina should be improved on the offensive line, but the most improvement we we better see, right, because this is a critical year. And Shane Beamer did bring back Clayton White. The front 6 or 7, linebacker, defensive end, and defensive tackle, those to me should be the most improved positions on the team because of the veterans, the transfer portal guys, the returners, and some extremely talented newcomers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's one thing that has been beneficial for some teams in getting better very quickly is bringing in some old guys, bringing in some old talent. And, the one thing about that is you're turning over again pretty quickly. And South Carolina is going to be turning over again pretty quickly next year. But this year is obviously a huge year for Shane Beamer and that coaching staff, and getting really old really quick and pretty talented pretty quick is certainly a big deal. And having guys around who have done it, maybe not at the SEC level, but at the collegiate level, you feel much more comfortable as a coaching staff when you're worried, or you're less worried when you've got a 23-year-old who's been on the field for 1,000 college football snaps or whatever versus a redshirt freshman or sophomore who barely played. So there's time and place for some of those guys, but there's certainly some comfort in having some old guys too.
No doubt about it. So, John, let's talk about the offensive line and with that, on the offense, the new rule changes, which basically takes all the restrictions off of the analysts, right? Like Mike Shula, he's a senior offensive analyst. He can be the quarterback's coach now if Dal Loggins wants him to be, and Loggins can be the walk-around coordinator. You could have an analyst take over a position. And so for me, this is what it boils down to, and I want your take on it. How involved should Sean Elliott be with this offensive line? Because to me, he's without a doubt the most experienced and the best offensive line coach on the roster. And even though you hired him as the tight ends coach and the run game coordinator, now, I mean, couldn't he kind of be like Ray Tanner and Lonnie Teasley, could be like Chad Holbrook and kind of be the tag team there? Or even some schools, they have the offensive line and the tight ends in the same room. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my thought is that you hire Lonnie Teasley to do the job, and if you think he can do the job, then you let him keep doing the job. I guess we'll figure out whether Shane Beamer thinks he can do the job or not. Sean Elliott Sean's going to have a little bit of influence in there as the run game coordinator, but I mean, on the surface, I don't think he's necessarily going to have a ton, and I don't know how you would really want to approach that in terms of, having Sean be the coach of that group when he's not the coach of that group. So, it comes down to what Shane thinks in terms of, were we terrible on the offensive line last year because we didn't coach well, or were we terrible because we didn't have nearly good enough talent and way too many injuries to overcome it? I mean, I kind of lean towards the latter of those two things. When Lonnie Teasley took over, I don't even want to say mid-year or early in the year, a couple years ago for Greg Atkins, I thought the offensive line continually got better over the course of that season. As Teasley had his hands on it, a little bit more and a little bit more directly. I thought at that time that Teasley was showing kind of his chops as a coach versus a recruiter. So, maybe they were getting better that year because they were just better. Maybe it was from his coaching. I don't know. I mean, I think we'll figure out a lot of that this year in terms of, how good of a coach he is, because he's got talent. Of course, maybe it'll be because Sean Elliott's, adding a little bit of influence in there too. It's going to be really difficult to measure without getting some people in that building, to be really brutally honest. And we don't always know exactly, how direct folks are being when it comes to, on hands-on coaching and hands-on teaching. So we'll see. I think that's it's a very fair question, and it's a determination that Shane's going to have to make, and probably make pretty quickly, because they've got to be much better very quickly.
Yeah, so a couple stats. Last year, South Carolina averaged just 2.8 yards per carry on the ground, and gave up 41 sacks. Of course, you did have 9 of those against North Carolina. Still don't know how Spencer Rattler survived that game. But to me, with all the guys coming back and the recruiting classes the last couple of years, Tree and Trevon Ball, they got baptized by fire last year. They should be better. You got some old hats like Rashawn Lee and Ja'Kai Moore, who's healthy. You got Kason Henry, who's finally healthy, who I think this staff has been high on since the day he set foot on campus. You got transfers like Torricelli Simpkins. And so I think it's going to be very interesting. There's a lot of talent. Marquis Anderson. I mean, I'm not going to name everybody, but there's enough guys. And John, if we're looking, halfway into the year, or that during that second bye week, and South Carolina's averaging 2.8 yards per carry, that's not going to be a good sign for Shane Beamer. Now, I do not expect that to be the case, because I think they will be better up front, and I think they will be much improved and much deeper at the running back position. And so how is Rocket Sanders not a first-team preseason All-SEC guy? I don't even know who that guy is at Auburn. He's first-team preseason All-SEC. I mean, does it really matter? Because, the media did pick South Carolina to finish dead last in basketball last year. So how much should we really put into these?
No, in just being honest, like, media, when it comes to football, there's too many who had the opportunity to vote. SEC is very open to letting whatever kind of media participate in their media days, at least from a football standpoint. And, you just have people who really aren't educated enough, and some who just like to have fun with it and whatever. And it is what it is. And then, I've always said that basketball SEC media in general, not everybody, but in general, just not very good and not paying a whole lot of attention. And because everybody who does basketball does football. Like, if you work on an SEC beat, you do football. Like, it's just part of it. and so you have people who have to vote in the middle of October, and what's going on in the middle of October is football, and what's not going on in the middle of October is basketball. So, the media for football is watered down. In terms of like actual people who know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying the Auburn running back is going to be bad, but and then with basketball, you have media who just aren't educated at that point in time on, who's good and who's bad. And that's just, I don't take media polls, preseason stuff. Like, I just take that with a grain of salt. Now, when coaches do preseason things, I put a little bit more stock into it, because those guys have a better feel for what a season should look like. They're not always right, but they have a better feel for it. But, so I don't worry about all of that too much. It's nice to when you're picked really well and have a bunch of guys who are honored. It's certainly nice to boast, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make too much difference.
All right, good stuff. So one more football question, then I want to switch to baseball. So what are your thoughts on the new rules now that with the iPads on the sideline, the helmet communication, a lot more like the NFL game, and how beneficial can that be for a young quarterback like Lenora Sellers? Because my understanding is the communication can go until 15 seconds on the play clock. And so theoretically, if you ran a hurry up, no huddle offense out here, the Texas high schools call it NASCAR, the offensive coordinator could be on the helmet comms right up until the snap.
Yeah. And that's got to be hugely beneficial to be able to say what you're seeing to your guy, right there in his head, and then be able to reevaluate it on the sideline too. I think it's certainly going to be beneficial. It you're going to work it all throughout preseason camp. You're going to practice it as much as you can. There's still going to be a little bit of growing pains in terms of, operationally, exactly how to get your message across, exactly how to there'll be kinks to work out a little bit early on regardless. But, I think it'll ultimately be very good for any player, but for the sport in general. Why not? I mean, everybody's got the ability from a financial standpoint to add whatever the NCAA allows. And, I think it certainly helps make the sport better. People when talking about pitch comm in baseball, they talk about how, it takes away the game from the players and puts it on the coaches. But you know what? This is college sports. They're not professionals. They aren't the ones who are. They're doing as much as they can and studying scouting reports and learning everything. But, they got classes and other things too. Like they're not pro athletes. They having that little bit of extra guidance, having that little bit of extra coaching and those tools to do it, I think is certainly going to be helpful for players to grow and be able to execute on Saturdays.
All right, good stuff. All right, so let's switch to baseball. So we're going to go in the chat box. And so Craig did identify the Auburn running back, Jarquez Hunter. If the guy at Ole Miss had come back, to me, he's definitely legit, but he went to Ohio State. So Craig asked, where does the transfer shortstop from FSU fit in on the infield equation for next season in baseball?
Yeah, I mean, he'll get a chance to win the starting shortstop job. He's started close to 200 games, maybe 150 games between Florida, probably closer to 150 games between Florida and Florida State in his 3 years at those schools. He's going to have an opportunity. He's more of a glove than a bat. They brought in a kid from Ohio State, Henry Kasmer, who's more of a bat than a glove. They've got Will Tippett, but not bad with a glove. He's just more of a bat. And they've got Tippett coming back. They've got an incoming freshman named KJ Scobie, who is really talented. He's very physical for a freshman already. He's more talented offensively. I mean, they've got options. To say how is he going to fit? I mean, he can be a utility guy. When I say he's started a bunch of games, like he's started some at second base, started some at short, and he's worked some at third base as well. So he can fit somewhere. But at the end of the day, they're still 200 days away from first game. Like I can't I can't pencil anybody into any role. I know that Ethan Petrie's going to be in there somewhere, and I'm pretty sure it'll be right field, but it might be first base. So like it's just hard. Like this is kind of like pre-spring practice stage for baseball, right? Like if we're going to compare it to football, like they still have 6 weeks of team practice in the fall, which actually happens in the fall. So we can call that fall practice. They've still got 6 weeks of team stuff to do and scrimmages, and they're going to scrimmage outside opponents, and then 3 weeks in the preseason, and all that'll kind of be sorted out. But Carry-On certainly got a glove to play in the infield, and if he swings it pretty well, then he's got a real shot to play somewhere.
All right, so any real surprises from the MLB draft as far as guys South Carolina's losing that you did not expect? Is there anybody still on the fence? Update us on the status of the team following the MLB draft.
Yeah, I mean, nothing too crazy surprising, to be honest with you, with the way things were kind of trending, the week of. They did some things to try to get Matthew Becker and Roman Kimball and Eli Jones, those three guys back to school. It worked with two of them. We kind of thought Eli was going to go regardless because he would be drafted high enough. They didn't. What happened was they didn't want any of those guys to sign on day 3. Like if you get drafted on day 3 and get $150,000, like they didn't want those guys to go. If you got drafted on day 2 and got $250,000 or whatever, like go ahead and go play pro ball. But they didn't want any of these guys to feel like cut rate dudes. Wanted to give them the opportunity, and Eli got drafted second day, and the other guys got calls on day 3 and didn't do it. So nothing was really a surprise from that standpoint. Eli Jerzenbeck is a guy who wanted day 1 money. It's not that he was trying to sign and didn't. He wanted day 1 money, which is over $1 million. He wasn't going to get that. So, nothing really unexpected happened. The only thing that I thought would happen, which hasn't happened yet, is Kennedy Jones. I thought he had a chance to get drafted and have not sign a free agent deal. And that hasn't happened at this point, but he cleaned out his locker, the day the season ended and told everybody that he was out. He wasn't coming back. Hadn't spoken with Coach Mainieri, when he got hired. So he had not had any kind of level of engagement with South Carolina. I hadn't written this yet, but, he has had a little bit of engagement with South Carolina here in the last few days, and maybe something changes for him. But he's not somebody that's been expected back at all. So we'll see if that changes. And it might, but it certainly did not look that way for a long time. But that was the only guy who I would say was unexpected. Morlando was expected, obviously. Carson Messina was expected. Cole Messina. From the recruiting class, everything went as expected. Brandon Clark got picked really early. Nobody else did. Everybody else wanted some high numbers. Scobie, who I mentioned earlier, he could have gone middle of day 2 if he wanted to. Riley Goodman, if he hadn't torn his UCL, he may have had much more of an opportunity, but he ended up deciding he wanted to come to school. It ended up going about as well as they could. And just to answer Craig's question, Jerzenbeck is 100% back.
Awesome. So is Aiden Palmer a replacement for Brandon Clark when Clark got drafted? Talk to us about him. I mean, he had good numbers. He's a 6'3", 205-pound lefty. As a freshman, was 9-3 in 14 starts with 77 strikeouts to just 30 base on balls in 60 1/3 innings.
Yeah, not really a replacement. They knew Clark was going. He's usually when you go to a JUCO, you go for 2 years. He's a 1-year JUCO guy. So he decided to leave, and there were several schools recruiting him. And while South Carolina probably doesn't need any more arms, they are what you have coming back. You didn't really have much from a left-handed standpoint. You have Becker and McCoy, and that's really it. So they've been very intentional in recruiting some left-handed pitchers, and this guy's got a lot of strikeouts and did so in high school as well. Bunch of innings. He's a workhorse kind of guy. Few too many walks, but doesn't let him come around to score. So that's a big part of the game right there. Is keeping runs off the board. But I think he's a good pickup. He'll be right around 90 with his fastball. Get up there to 92, maybe 93. But yeah, definitely a very good pickup for now and in the future. He'll be here for at least a couple of years.
All right, so you got about 3.5 more minutes for us today?
Sure.
All right, so let's go back to football. And I did want to ask, I asked Mike Yuba this yesterday. So give me 2 newcomers and 2 returners you're excited about in football on offense.
Okay, 2 newcomers and 2 returners I'm excited about on offense. Certainly Rocket Sanders, he's obviously the first one that comes to mind. I think folks want 2020 Rocket Sanders or 2022 Rocket Sanders, excuse me. And I get it. I put me in that category that includes everybody. He was a special talent that year. And I would love to be able to watch that and cover it. But even if you get like 90% of that, like that's transformative for South Carolina. Like even if he's not fully the same guy, that's transformative for South Carolina. So I can't wait to see what he looks like. I mean, you could watch him last year and just tell that he wasn't right when he was playing. I mean, he looked too heavy. It just didn't look right. And we asked him about it in the back in. I guess it was January or maybe early February when we got to talk to some of the newcomers, and he said, "Yeah, I've got to get my weight right." And Shane brought it up at media days that he's really dropped a bunch of weight, but dropped 6% body fat. It seems like he's in good physical shape and good physical condition, and we'll kind of see. How that equates with his knee and his shoulder and whatever else. But I'm really excited about him, obviously, and as far as a offensive newcomer. And I would say probably Delvon Campbell, transfer from Nevada. He's got some size. He's played a long time. They really like what he's done over there. So. I know he's a summer guy, so we'll see. But he should be able to pick up everything quickly. He provides something a little bit different than most of the wide receivers have. So, and if I were picking a freshman, I'd say Mazio Bennett. And I know these are all skill guys. These are more sexy guys. I could easily throw Josiah Thompson in there. But you know what? At the end of the day, South Carolina was so light on skill last year. Like I'm ready to see some skill guys. Like you asked me who I'm looking forward to seeing, and I'm picking skill because we were able to watch Xavier Leggett last year, and that was really it. Like,
no doubt.
I guess you could say Trey Knox maybe. Like,
oh come on, Joshua Simon was better than him, I thought.
Well, I agree. I agree with you. I mean, Joshua was better than Trey, and I've said it all last year and said it all off season this year that Josh didn't play nearly enough snaps, but there just weren't guys on offense who were just like a treat to watch. As bad as that sounds, and Mario was at times for sure, but I want to see some of these skill guys. And then when I think about returning guys on offense, like maybe I overvalue him. I don't know, but I my first thought always goes to Vershawn Lee. He does so much in terms of just kind of stabilizing that offensive line, doing whatever needs to be done, regardless of whether it's position or whatever else. Like he's the leader of that group. And I know they haven't had a whole heck of a lot of success, but it's not because of him, and it's not because of a lack of effort. I certainly appreciate talent, but I also appreciate people who work hard, and Vershawn is that guy. And then I guess Lenoris, you call him a returner. I want to see what he does against real teams with my own eyes, and everybody who gets to see him every day just raves about him. Obviously we've had some interaction with him and been able to talk to him in person and kind of see what he's about from that standpoint. And he seems like an A+ dude from an A+ family. So really looking forward to seeing him on a day in or a game in, game out basis, play in, play out, and all that good stuff.
All right. So real quick, one newcomer and one returner on defense.
Dylan Stewart for sure. You don't get too many 5-star defensive ends. There's not going to be a ton of pressure on him in terms of being or having to do something immediately, because you've got really good players and older players there ahead of him. And then Nicky Manwari, I pick him because he got off to such a tough start last year from an injury standpoint, and maybe not playing up to his lofty standards and big capabilities, just as he was kind of nursing some things, and then he was playing nickel and just things didn't fit quite right. And I thought he ended the year really well. The kind of the one knock on Nick was he wasn't forcing turnovers, right? Like if you think of a safety, you think of a guy who's like creating like catching some interceptions and giving some hits, forcing a couple of fumbles, doing whatever. Like he didn't have any turnover plays until his last 2 games of the season, and had the interception against Kentucky and then the one against Clemson. And I just feel like he's going to have a really big year this year. And I think probably not enough people are talking about him.
Yeah. I also thought he spent part of the season playing out of position at nickel.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully they got that solved. Well, John, I can't thank you enough. Great stuff. As always, hopefully you get over to see Whit Merrifield and the Braves win some games here in these last few weeks. I know it's coming fast, and so we'll look forward to your 8 days away from preseason.
There we go. There we go. And for folks who are like me, who aren't like me, I've got to cover football next weekend because that's when camp opens. But Jonah Bride with the Marlins versus Whit Merrifield with the Braves in Atlanta next Thursday through Sunday, August 1 through 4. So you can go watch a couple of former Gamecocks out there if you want to.
Good stuff, John. Thanks again as always, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Keith.
Yep. All right, that was John Whittle from the Big Spur. So if you're enjoying the show, hit the subscribe button, follow the YouTube page, give us a 5-star review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Hit the subscribe buttons there as well. And so I'll say, Craig, I'm with you. I mean, it's just not Dylan Stewart. Okay. This freshman class, there are some freaks. Okay. Michael Smith, 6'6", 255 pounds. Matthew Fuller, 5'11", 225, and running sub 4'5", Lewis Solomon, Josiah Thompson, Mazio Bennett, who a lot of people, you hear a lot of talk about him being a game one starter, and certainly, a lot of very talented guys at linebacker, Fred J.R. Johnson and Wendell Gregory. Those guys are going to play. I mean, this, not the biggest high school class, but a lot of great players. All right, so let's go back out onto the Nana's Porch guest line and bring in our guy from Go Gamecocks and the state, Jordan Kaye, who was, man, it's a year of first for you. You got to your first season at Gamecock Football, your first time at covering the Masters. You won the lottery. Now you've been to Dallas for the first ever SEC Media Days with Texas and Oklahoma. And so how was Dallas?
Yeah, it was cool. It's kind of a big circus over there for SEC Media Days. It's not exactly the best environment for reporters to get what they're trying to get or to grab anyone off the side or anything, but it's kind of a spectacle with 800, 900 media members all crammed into one little floor of a Omni ballroom, and just these coaches and players getting whisked around for 4 days. So yeah, it was interesting to see. Not a ton came out of it, I would say.
So did you eat at any really exciting restaurants? Where was the best meal you got while you were there?
I had some good barbecue on Main Street. I think Pecan Lodge, right next to Terry Black's. It was pretty good barbecue. So that was probably the best meal. They fed us pretty dang well inside the Omni. So I wasn't going hungry.
Good stuff. All right. So we are 9 days away from the start of SEC football. And so, like you said, almost 900 media. I mean, at some point, that's just essentially they would have let me in there if I would have wanted to be there. I could have driven up, but I couldn't make it. How much stock should be put into the media's preseason SEC picks? Particularly after Lamont Paris in South Carolina finished dead last in basketball. What are your thoughts on, how they lined it up for the media to figure it out? Who, is South Carolina number 13? I kind of think looking at Florida's schedule, I know South Carolina haven't beaten Florida, but if O'Donnell Fortune could have made a tackle on fourth down last year, they would have beat them. But that schedule, to me, I don't think Billy Napier makes it out of mid-October.
Yeah, South Carolina being behind Florida with that schedule, that was probably the one surprise. But other than that, I think they probably were slotted exactly where, me and you thought, and certainly where Shane Beamer thought they were going to be slotted. Listen, this is a team that went 5-7 last year, has one of the tougher schedules in the country, and doesn't have a returning quarterback. There's a lot of question marks. And people, as much as me and you and the fan base raves about this freshman class and Dylan Stewart and, Josiah Thompson and even some of the transfers, Kyle Kennard, no one knows who those people are. The only guy that most people know on South Carolina's roster, too, they know Nick Harbor because of the NCAA game, and they know Rocket Sanders because of what he did at Arkansas 2 years ago. That's it. It's a lot of very unknown players. And, that's not a knock necessarily on South Carolina because they believe in those guys. And just because they don't have the names behind them doesn't mean they shouldn't have got him or anything like that. So no, South Carolina shouldn't put any stock into it. If they did the scouting that they believe in and it works out, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter one bit. And just because those names aren't known now doesn't mean they're not going to be known in December. So, yeah, I wasn't surprised where they were at, and I don't think it's should be shocking to anyone.
All right, so your thoughts on Shane Beamer's 17-minute dissertation? I won't even call it an opening statement because that's way too long for an opening statement.
Yeah, it was. I was surprised the direction he went. I think Shane this entire offseason has been trying to, rally just good vibes a little bit of saying, hey, I really like the guys we brought into the program. I really like the 25, 27 transfers we snagged out of the portal. I really like our freshman class, led by Dylan Stewart and Josiah Thompson. Like, I really like our team. And him at media days was just trying to say that over and over and over again, of telling anyone who would listen, we're not going to be the 13th best team in this conference. We are going to be a lot better than you think, that anyone thinks. Did he go a little far with that? He said the playoff word. He said, our coaches didn't leave for the NFL to go 6-6 or something. There was a lot of lines in there that I wrote, if this season goes poorly, anyone who doesn't like South Carolina they'll have a field day with some of these quotes. He really put himself out there. He put himself on the line and was like, I'm gonna really go out on a limb and don't really care, what the consequences might be. Go listen to anyone else's opening monologue. Most of it is trying to tell people that, media polls don't matter, that it's all about the work and blah, 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 blah. It was a lot of quelling expectations, and he just ramped them up. So it was interesting. Not what I was.
So did Brian Kelly right before him, who claimed, he had the best team he's ever had.
Yeah.
And he's got, I'm so excited about Garrett Nussmeier. Well, guess what, dude?
Yeah.
Garrett Nussmeier is not Jaden Daniels, and I don't even think he is Lenora Sellers. So
Sure.
Is he a coach's son? Yes. Is he a competent guy? Yes. But they lost a lot, and plus they probably had the worst defense in the SEC last year, and I just don't know if you can solve that all in one season.
Yeah, that was another interesting one. He was going off about Nussmeier, who I do think is, I don't know if he's as bad as you think. We haven't seen him enough, I don't know, to really gauge him. And they brought in a new defensive coordinator. We'll see how many problems that solves. They've got the Harold Perkins situation where they got to figure out where he's going to play. So, they certainly have a ton of question marks. And yeah, Brian Kelly, but he's always done that though. Even last year when things were going bad, he was always, very positive and stuff. I suppose Shane Beamer is kind of the same cloth too.
All right, so in the Nana Sports chat box, we've been talking about who could be the starting corner opposite of O'Donnell Fortune, who I still think is just a guy. And so Bakari Swain, we know he had the car accident. Well, now the report has been out. He ran a red light. Both vehicles were totaled. I know you guys at the state have written about it. How big of a deal and what's the criminal liability here? Should it cost Swain any, playing time? Is he in any jeopardy here?
I don't think so. It was, I think we reported he sped up. I think the light had just turned red. He sped up and hit a car. not like he was driving or drinking. It wasn't like that at all. It was probably just a dumb mistake. And, we confirmed with South Carolina, like he's still on the team and everything. So I don't think, there'll be too many consequences along with that. But I think he actually does have a chance to start. Like, I really like what I've seen from him. And, he was a guy who kind of came into this program. I think he was as a wide receiver.
He was.
And,
I still thought he was probably last year would have been South Carolina's second best wide receiver behind Xavier Legette.
Yeah, and so I think it just took, I wasn't surprised he didn't play last year, because if you're trying to learn the footwork of a cornerback in a couple months, that's an uphill battle. So the fact that he's had an entire offseason to learn that, the kid's an athlete. And I think just after a little bit of fine-tuning from Torian Gray about footwork and how to play the position, I think he's a guy I'm really looking at to be like, hey, this should be your starting job. Go take it.
I completely agree. He was very impressive in the spring game, and it's easy to see, now why they wanted him at corner, because he is such a natural, fluid athlete. He can turn his hips, he can run, he has great ball skills. I still think he could be involved in the kick return game as well, because of his speed, his elusiveness on film, and his ball skills. And so, you got him, and you got Judge Collier, and you got O'Donnell Fortune. After that, who have you got? I don't really know. Probably to me, Jalewis Solomon. Emory Floyd.
Sure.
He's a track guy that played football. He hadn't done anything. We'll see. But
yeah, it's hard to know with those guys who came in, over the summer.
And so for you, based off your study, based off what Shane Beamer said, if you got three big questions about this South Carolina football team, what are your three big questions here as we sit 9 days away from fall camp?
I think the big one is wide receivers. Who's the guy? Who's going to step up? This is a group that Shane Beamer almost didn't talk about the entire day at SEC Media Days. And often when coaches, leave out an entire position group, there's might be a reason behind it. And so it's just a bunch of guys that are unproven. The one everyone's excited about is Nick Harper, and he has 12 collegiate catches. There's not a lot of proven guys. I really like Gage Larvadain. I think he was spectacular at Miami of Ohio last year. He's going to, along with Nick Harper, is going to be one of the fastest dudes in Division I this season. But again, it's we haven't seen him against SEC competition. So that's just a massive unknown. Aside from Harper, it's a lot of just 5'10", 5'11" dudes. I don't know what they're going to look like. Maybe they're great. Maybe they're a bunch of just phenomenal guys who are just taking the top off of defense. I don't know. So that's the one big question mark. Second is just how young is this offensive line going to be? There's a chance where we get 3 to 4 freshmen or redshirt freshmen in there, and you're kind of looking around holy cow, are they just building for the future here? I think Josiah Thompson's going to start. Everyone you talk to is just raving about the kid. He looks the part too. There was one point he was eating 8 meals a day. The kid's massive. He looks really good. Tree Babalade, Marquis Anderson, Marquis had the terrible injury last year. Tree kind of battled with some stuff. So, those guys could start, and then, you kind of look around. Hey, is there anyone else who steps up? I think Casey Henry. Trevon Ball, sorry. Yeah, I forgot about him.
Well.
There's a ton of dudes. Casey Henry is coming back from injury. He looks really good. And then even one of the transfers from, I think it's NC Central, Torricelli Simpkins. He looked really good in spring ball. Like, I think he's going to compete for a starting job at one of the guard spots. So I'm just curious, like, how young they're going to go with the offensive line. Vershawn Lee is probably going to start at center, would be my guess, and that's good. You want a veteran anchor in that spot, and so, but who's going to be around him? That's what I'm curious about. The last thing, trying to think, Sellers is just such an unknown. Like, as much as we just love the kid, we love everything we've seen from him. Like, we just have not really seen him in like an offense tailored around himself against SEC competition. You look at what he did last year, and it was spectacular. But it was 2 plays we're judging him off of, 2 garbage time plays, a big throw against Furman and a nice run against Vanderbilt. He was also like, they were just tailoring one like package for him. He was basically in Spencer Rattler's offense. And so what is Dowell Loggins going to do to create an offense that suits what Sellers is best at? And what does that look like? And can that work against SEC competition? Like, I don't know. I think it will. I think it'll look good. But, until we see it week 2 against Kentucky, I think that's got to be a big question mark.
Yeah, I think Sean Elliott's role as a run game coordinator and Dowell Loggins' years at Arkansas with KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders. Lenore Sellers is basically the same size, and he's, at least inside the program, they feel like he is a better passer than KJ Jefferson.
Yeah.
And so, now they've taken all the restrictions off analysts. To me, if Sean Elliott's not coaching the offensive line, he needs to be, as the run game coordinator, coaching the coaches on personnel, run schemes, and he is very well versed in having a dual threat quarterback, but probably not one that's 6'3.5", 240 pounds and runs a 4.41 laser timed 40 in Lenore Sellers. But the combination of Sellers with Rocket Sanders, I think, is intriguing. I do think that there will be some answers at wide receiver. I think a lot of people do forget that Tyshawn Russell had never played wide receiver until his senior year. He makes that big catch, and then I think he feels like, hey, I'm going to be a big play guy, and he kind of didn't have the concentration, tried to run before the catch. From sources inside the program, they won't be surprised if Mazio Bennett could be a day one starter. I really think Dale Von Campbell and Nick Harbor. I think Jared Brown, Gage Larvadane, like you said. I think there are guys there, right? And Mike Furry, his reputation as a former player and as a very successful coach, you got to like unexpected recruiting chops this guy's got going into Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and beating Penn State on Lex Cyrus. It looks like tomorrow around this time, South Carolina is going to land Malik Clark, over North Carolina and Florida State. And even Brian Rowe in Charlotte, he stayed committed. Nobody basically knew who he was. Now he's a 4-star guy. I think obviously we got to see it, and that is one of my big question marks is who are the 6 or 7 guys that are the main guys. There's a lot of bodies there. 5 transfers, 2 true freshmen, 2 sophomores that are the only returning wide receivers, redshirt freshmen. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so one of my biggest question marks that nobody's talking about is field goal kicker, because since Shane Beamer's been the coach, you had Parker White, who, because he got to kick 5 years, was South Carolina's all-time leading field goal kicker, and inside 47 yards was damn consistent. You went from him to Mitch Jeter, who was 23 for 25 in 2 seasons at South Carolina, including some 50-plus yarders. And in 2022, he didn't miss a single kick.
Yeah.
And so, to me, there is a question mark there because
you're right. You're right. And I think it might be naive to overlook it. I suppose the 2 reasons that I'm not concerned about it is there seem to be sticking with the 6th-year guy, Alex Herrera. The fact that he stuck around is probably
he's never attempted a field goal in a college football game.
That's a problem. My point, okay, let me put it this way. They were not active in trying to get a kid out of the transfer portal. That kind of told me a lot, where I was like, oh, they must really like Alex Herrera. Again, I don't know. You're right, though. I mean, this kid's unproven, and to go in with an unproven kicker, you're taking a risk. I also just trust Joe DeCamillis that knows what he's talking about kicking-wise. And if they needed a kicker, he would have gone out and got a kicker. And so the fact that Joe DeCamillis seemingly put his stamp on Herrera by not going out in the portal and getting a new kid, that kind of made me, I guess, feel like comfortable with it. I was like, okay, maybe they're probably okay. But you're right.
I mean, practice and games are 2 different things. Let's say South Carolina trails Kentucky in week 2, 21-20 at Commonwealth Stadium, and there's 4 seconds on the clock, and South Carolina's got to make a 45-yard field goal to win the game.
But I wouldn't trust any college kicker with that. I don't care who it is. Like, unless you've got, like, literally one of the top 2 kickers in the country, I'm not trusting any college kicker to make that field goal. None. So, like, I don't know. It's not ever going to be a position that's reliable. I know Mitch Jeter was pretty solid, but yeah, I'm just not really, like, if he's kicked or hasn't kicked, he's still, there's still probably a 50-50 chance he misses it if he's a college kicker. So that's just how I look at it. Don't put yourself in that spot.
I'd put my money on Mitch Jeter making that kick, because he made that.
Yeah,
sure. A pressure kick at Clemson in 2022 in a tie game in the 4th quarter. And so when you talk about in the SEC how slim the margin for error is in winning and losing games, making kicks is potentially a big
You're right.
part of it,
You're right.
So, but I mean, look, I remember that Michigan game. A lot of people remember this. South Carolina's field goal kicker missed like 3 kicks in that game. And so it's coming down to last minute, and South Carolina's down by 1 or 2 points. And that, if you listen to the replay right after of Dylan Thompson having to come in the game, they're talking about a quarterback draw to get into field goal position. And Spurrier's like, screw it.
Yeah.
If you see the safety blitzing, we're going check the 4 verticals and we're going over the top, and they throw a touchdown pass and win the game. So, I mean, maybe you're right. Don't, if you're not confident in it, go for the downs.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
so
we'll see.
how about positions of strength, position groups that you like for this team?
I love the running back room. Like, I mean, not even Rocket Sanders, but I really like Oscar Adaway and Jawarn Howell. And that's before we get into, even the guys who are returning, the DJ Braswells or even the freshman Matthew Fuller. Like, I just think that room is stacked. If I had to bet, just everything I've heard about Jawarn Howell is like, this guy is fantastic. And Adaway is going to be gone next year. Rocket Sanders is going to be gone next year. Like, I think there's a world where Jawarn Howell is your starting running back next season. I think that's possible. But with Rocket Sanders, he seems to be healthy. Shane Beamer kind of said, hey, we did a ton of rehab, and this guy has been putting in more work than anyone in the building, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., rehabbing. And he's going to be full go for fall camp, has already basically been training with the team over the summer. If he's anywhere near his 2022 form, I mean, this could be one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the SEC. And then you have a quarterback in Lenora Sellers who's a figure in the run game. And so that's just going to help all these running backs too. I mean, they're gonna have holes because Lenora Sellers is, fake in one way. So running backs, I think, is a huge position of strength. And then, man, these guys on the edge are just disgusting. I mean, they're going to be so good this season. I think that's one to almost like lock in. You have, with the way that they're going to play defense with, the flex nickel of going between the 3-3-5 and the 4-2-5. Basically, they got a bunch of these guys who are, 6'5", 6'6", and can go between being a defensive end and an outside linebacker. And the result is like you just have a bunch of freaks in this room. I mean, it's a bunch of Dylan Stewarts and Bam Martin Scotts and Gilbert Edmonds and Kyle Kennards. And there's 6 dudes who can just rotate in and out. And it's just like freak after freak. And they're going to be really good. I mean, they're going to be able to get after the quarterback. And it doesn't hurt that they are being supported by an interior defensive line who is all veterans. Tonka Hemingway and Boogie Huntley and TJ Sanders. Like, that's just going to be a really good front. You have these crazy athletic guys on the outside and then a bunch of veteran big dudes in the middle. They could be a really, really good, front seven for South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I think you also return an all SEC guy in Debo Williams, Bam Martin Scott, but you brought in veteran
Debo's
linebackers.
playing more linebacker, but yeah.
Right, like Demetrius Knight and Bengali Kamara both have been clocked at 22 miles per hour on the GPS or catapult, which that's what Xavier Legette was running last year. And before that, the other Debo who's running it and catching it for the 49ers now. I mean, and the returns are strong for Wendell Gregory, who's now listed at 6'3", 245. He played basically in that hybrid edge stand-up guy in high school. Fred J.R. Johnson, 6'4", 240. Jaron Willis. I mean, I think they're very improved there, particularly with the speed and athleticism and the experience of the guys they brought in from the transfer portal.
Yeah, 100%. There are even beyond that, there are guys who can contribute, like you're saying, some of these freshmen.
Yeah, and so and the 2 transfers on the interior of the defensive line. You still got Nick Barrett, who has been a contributor, and DeAndre Jules played a lot of football at Pitt. He's a veteran guy, and he 6'4", 315, and I mean, he is in his grown man. I mean, he is a grown-ass man. Let's face it.
Yeah. Montel Goodwine, who came from Alabama.
Goodwine was a 4-star out of the DMV that played behind some 5-stars at Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had, according to those that would know, has looked well. So I'm with you. I think the front 6 or 7 of that defense really has a chance this year. And for South Carolina, they need it.
Yeah, big time.
All right, so you mentioned Dylan Stewart, you mentioned Rocket Sanders, Torricelli Simpkins, Vershawn Lee. I mean, I asked John Whittle this. Most of his picks that he was looking forward to seeing were skill guys because there was a lack of skill at South Carolina last year. That should not be the case. I've also heard, like we know about Jawan Howell, but man, I've heard Matthew Fuller has been exceeded all expectations this summer. I think that running back room has got a chance, and then Michael Smith comes in. You got Joshua Simon, you got Brady Hunt out of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And anytime anybody asks somebody about Michael Smith, their eyes just light up. I mean, this guy's 6'6", 255 and runs like a wide receiver on film. I think that can help because of the question marks at wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm more curious of how Sean Elliott's going to rotate those guys. I mean, last season they basically had 2 tight ends, and now if Michael Smith's as good as everyone has been saying he is, now you got 3. Are we going to see any 2 tight end sets? Are we going to see them at more of a figure in the receiving game? So, yeah, I'm really excited to see how mostly how those guys are utilized, because I think they're all really good. And if Michael Smith maybe doesn't see the field as much this season, I mean, next year he's going to be a staple.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can use all 3 of those guys can play in line, and you could flex. So you could basically change personnel groupings with your formations because of the athleticism really all of those guys possess. So
yeah.
Is tomorrow Birdies with Beamer?
It is.
All right, so who's in your group? And
I don't know yet. We haven't found out.
So how much cash are you thinking you're going to hustle off of the unsuspecting assistant coaches that like to make side bets that are in your group?
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing, but I will now bring some money.
All right, so you got Birdies with Beamer tomorrow. He's going to speak to the media. Then I think, is it August 2nd or August 1st will be, I think it's August. Is it August 1st? He has his State of the Union, and then the first day of practice is August 2nd. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So are you anticipating another filibuster to open the press conference from Shane?
No. I think it'll be pretty tame. I mean, everyone he's been very available like the last couple months, doing all the welcome home events, speaking at SEC media days. It's like at this point, I'm almost like running out of questions. We've talked to him so many times, and so I think the big thing is any updates on guys.
All right, so usually that's included with the opening statement, right?
Yeah, I don't even know what to.
He always forgets that, and so, or it kind of intentionally, I think, leaves it out, hoping nobody's going to ask. And then Dave Kleininger with the first question always ask, and he's like, "Oh, the injury report."
Yeah.
And then you got to go through that.
Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know if there'll be much news from it.
All right, so what's your over-under for this South Carolina football team? What's the win total on the over-under?
I'll put it at 6. Like I think this team is gonna win. I mean, they have 4 guarantees. I think they got a chance to beat like Kentucky. I think they have a chance to beat A&M. They have a chance maybe. We'll see how LSU is to beat them at home. I mean, there's a chance they could win 7 games, 8 if it's a magical season, but there's also a chance that, things go down the gutter and they only win 5 again. So I think the Vegas line is like 5.5. Maybe I'd put it at 6 if you're optimistic. But yeah, that's about where it is. I mean, the schedule's just tough. There's some of these games, it's, it'd be really, really hard to win.
I mean, I do think there are some big name teams that are not going to be what they have been. Like, and maybe I'll be shocked, but I still don't expect LSU to be elite because you're not replacing the skill that you lost, and I'm not sure about the defense, but will South Carolina have enough? Who knows? At Oklahoma, I mean, they lost like 36 or 37 players. The portal, their quarterback went to Oregon for more money.
Yeah, they really, really like the redshirt freshman they have, Jackson Arnold. And so it'll kind of be a fun test in October, depending on how.
Brian Kelly really loves Garrett Nussmeier too, but
Shane Beamer really loves Lenore Sellers. I mean,
no doubt.
Across the SEC, there's these guys who are unproven. It's like 6 or 7 programs are on these redshirt freshman quarterbacks or some transfer that they have talked themselves into becoming the next guy, and you go 4 down the list before you even get to Sellers in a lot of cases.
All right, so on December 1st, is Shane Beamer still the head football coach at the University of South Carolina?
No doubt.
As we sit here today.
Of course, yeah. Even if they miss a bowl game, I think he still gets another year. No, like what he's done recruiting-wise, that gives him at least another year. He's built a lot of good faith with a lot of people. And then you just look around and it's like, you got to ask yourself, like, who is South Carolina going to get that's better? I don't know. So yes, he is the coach next year, barring a 1-win, 2-win season would be my guess, or some off-field thing. Yeah.
All right, so good stuff. Jordan, tell us what you got coming up on GoGamecocks.com and at the state sports here in the lead up to preseason football camp. Because as John Whittle said, don't even talk about fall because of how hot and humid it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Preseason, I like that. Just a lot of preview stuff. I mean, we'll get to talk to all the assistant coaches tomorrow. We'll get to talk to a lot of the players coming up.
Even Marquell Blackwell, is he going to actually speak to the meeting?
We'll see. It's supposed to. So, but yeah, so that'll be fun. I mean, some of these guys, like you hardly ever see them or talk to them. So it'll be nice to get them in a room for a little bit. So a lot of stuff from that over the next week.
So I got to think if things go as planned tomorrow, probably the guy that'll be the happiest and the most fired up will be Mike Furry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I want to ask him about his tweets every day, like with 87 emojis. They're hilarious. But, yeah, that guy is like full of energy. So he'll be fun to just chat with. No
doubt. All right. Well, hey, Jordan, great stuff as always. Thanks for being with us. Always enjoy your insights. Be well, and we'll look forward to catching up with you maybe, hopefully after Shane Beamer's State of the Union address.
Yes. Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it.
All right. That was Jordan Kaye from Go Gamecocks and the state. All right, so to get to our guests, we jumped out and went ahead of some of our Nana's Porch news notes and headlines. But first, let's go back into the Nana's Porch chat box. And so, Robert, I've heard very little about Dante Reno. I think he has a high floor because he's the son of a college head coach. He's had elite coaching in prep school. He is probably he's older than Lenore Sellers, a year older than him. And so I don't know if he'll be a factor this year. I think if you're South Carolina, you really would like to redshirt Dante Reno, right? Because, you got Luke Doty, who still could play quarterback. You took Robbie Ashford out of the transfer portal, who is another dual threat guy. And so to me, this offense should kind of resemble the Connor Shaw, KJ Jefferson offense. Like there should be a dual threat element to it and a quarterback run element to it. And you let Dante Reno sit, adjust to college life and get better and see how he is. Craig says if Sellers progresses during the year like Jalen Milroe did, he'll have a great year. Look, there's no doubt. Jalen Milroe was benched almost midway through the season. By the end of the season, quite frankly, I thought he should have been the Heisman. If I would have had a vote, I would have voted for him because of, yes, we know that Jaden Daniels had a historic season at LSU, but they still, at the end of the day, what were they, an 8-win football team? I think the last 8-win Heisman Trophy winner was George Rogers in 1980. So, I agree. I still think the SEC is a line of scrimmage league, and South Carolina should be much improved on both lines of scrimmage. You've got a deep, talented running back room. John Whittle brought up the point about Juju McDowell and mentioning him today. I do think he is more of a special teams and a gadget kind of guy that, you can put in on third down, or you can put in if you're going 4 wide and then you want to motion the running back out, and he could still be a speed sweep, jet sweep guy. But with Rocket Sanders, with Oscar Attaway, with Jawarn Howell, and I'm hearing Matthew Fuller may be the second most talented, physically talented running back on the roster. You are in great shape in that room. And so you better be able to run the ball, like I said. And I do think that they will. Craig, when we were talking about, the D-line, the linebacker, the edge group, when Jordan was talking about that, I completely agree. Look, Clayton White, you're out of excuses, brother. You better be good. You were fortunate that you got another year. And so you better take advantage of it. To me, I said last year I thought Clayton White should have been on the hot seat. Quite frankly, up until the last 2 weeks of the regular season, there was a lot of talk that there was probably going to be a change there. And then, Shane Beamer decided to stick it out. Offensively, Dowell Loggins, he's in his second year. You got a completely different type of quarterback. You've got, I think, more guys at wide receiver, more guys at tight end, more guys at running back and a dual threat quarterback. And you've got the helmet comms, which, as I said, if you get up to the line of scrimmage and your eyes in the sky are telling Lenora Sellers what they're seeing at the line of scrimmage, you can check as long as it's 15 seconds. You can be in communication with the quarterback right up until they snap the football, which to me is a huge benefit for an inexperienced quarterback, which obviously South Carolina is going to have. Kaye Kroger, I don't think people talk about him. He's a weapon on special teams. I mean, I don't think he had the type of year he wanted to have. I think he rushed himself back. I don't know if he was even 100%. Mechanically, Joe DiCamilla said, there was an issue with having his elbow tucked in just like a shooter would on the shots. You don't want that chicken wing out on the drops. He was not as consistent. They worked on that. To me, Kaye Kroger is an All-America candidate at punter. So, look, Shane Beamer has recruited well. South Carolina, because of the collectives, are going to be able to continue to recruit well. I do think that losing Taylor Edwards is probably going to cost South Carolina a couple of recruits that they were probably going to land in Lagonza Hayward and maybe Jared Smith. We'll wait and see on that one. I do expect South Carolina to land Malik Clark tomorrow. I think that would be a major shocker at this point if that doesn't happen. And then I still like South Carolina with Kendall Daniels and with Jalen Gilchrist. And if South Carolina adds 3 more 4-star guys, I mean, if you count the long snapper, that's 22 high school commitments going into the season. If you don't count him, that's 21, which is more than any summer of Shane since Shane Beamer has been the head football coach. All right, so as I said, some women's basketball recruiting to end the show. So I did mention Dawn Staley will be part of the Olympic delegation that will join the First Lady in the Paris Olympics. Staley, a 3-time gold medalist, head coach of the gold medal winning Team USA in the last Olympics. And in 2004, she was the flag bearer for the United States. This year, it will be LeBron James. Dawn Staley was the first basketball player, man or woman, to be the flag bearer. LeBron James now will be the third basketball player. And if you've been watching Team USA at 39 years old, that dude has carried Team USA, who's been sloppy. I know Kevin Durant hadn't been playing yet. I don't know why they're not closing with Jason Tatum on the floor. But LeBron James has won some of these games with his just still freakish athletic ability and physicality at the end of games by taking the ball to the basket and by getting it done. So we'll see what happens there. Gamecock women make the top 6 for the number 1 player in the class of 2025 in Lubbock, Texas point guard Aaliyah Chavez. Recently, Dawn Staley and Camila Cardoso were courtside along with Lisa Boyer watching her play. South Carolina, Texas Tech, LSU, Texas, UCLA, and Oklahoma. A lot of schools closer to home for Aaliyah Chavez. You do have UCLA and South Carolina as the two outliers, but she's the ultimate point guard. Let's see what can happen with that. The number 5 player in the country, Divine Barrage out of Iowa. She's a 2-guard. South Carolina, LSU, Illinois, Baylor, Virginia Tech, Arizona. I think South Carolina's a dark horse here for her. The number 6 player, Ago, I don't know, maybe it's pronounced Ago. Maybe the T is silent. Ago Maker, 6'1" wing out of Canada, who hit 7 threes. South Carolina is one of her favorites. And then Zakiya Johnson out of the state of Kentucky is the number 7 player. Nationally, South Carolina's in her top 6, along with LSU, Notre Dame, Kentucky, Louisville, and Southern Cal. And then South Carolina made a late offer to a fast riser and a late riser in the class of 25. Just last week, or maybe earlier this week, they offered 6-foot wing Jada Civil out of Vero Beach, Florida. She's vaulted into the top 40 players in the country. And so there's some women's basketball news. South Carolina did not make the Final 3 for the player I like best, Jazzy Davidson out of Oregon. I really liked her, long, lean, lefty. So we'll see. As I said in the opening, South Carolina's newcomers, that did not include our center from last year's class, and so we'll see what happens with her. I do think that her knee is healthy. Of course, I'm talking about 6'6" Adele Tack. Since she was on campus, she was not included with point guard Maddie McDaniel, with Joyce Edwards and Miriam Dowda. All right, so that's going to be a wrap on today's show. Appreciate everybody hanging in there with us. Okay, we're a week away from August and 9 days away from the start of fall camp. So now is a great time to become an annual VIP subscriber of Gamecock Pod Daily. Sign up the first week of August. You'll get almost 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. You can sign up and get 1 week for free. Frederick, appreciate the comments on having a really good show today. It helps when you have great guests that can just carry me through it. Last night we did not have the Garnet Black Town Hall because I had not any medical family emergency or anything, but some deadline issues on taxes that had to be done that required me to spend about 3 hours working at the computer that I really didn't want to be. And so if you would like more of this podcast, join our growing Gamecock family at Gamecock Pod Daily. You'll be able to listen to great guests like we've had on the show in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Hale McGranahan, Alex Jones, John Whittle from the Big Spur, Mike Yuba from Gamecock Central, Jordan Kaye and Peyton Titus from Go Gamecocks and the State. Pretty soon, Michael W. Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast, will be back on the show, as well as Brad Crawford, my good friend, former sports director Mike Gillespie, and many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join what is normally our Tuesday night Garnet and Black Town Hall, which is an interactive Zoom call with up to 100 of your favorite Gamecocks and friends. It's like being down at your favorite sports bar, having a cold one, having some food, and chopping it up and talking about the thing that brings us all together, and that is the Gamecocks. In addition to the Garnet and Black Town Hall, during football season, we have the morning after, which is every Sunday morning, whether the Gamecocks are playing or not. This year, you get 2 bye weeks or 2 open dates. We always have a show on the open date to talk about what's going on in the SEC and the country, and about what the Gamecocks need to do over the course of their bye week. So how can you sign up? Well, you get a week free, so you can sign up for 7 days, absolutely no charge. Be a part of the Garnet and Black Town Hall, listen to a week's worth of podcasts, and decide, for a monthly VIP is like 1 trip to Starbucks. So follow me on Twitter at Kaye Allsep. Follow the show on Twitter at Gamecock Pod. You can go to the top of those home pages, click the link, it'll take you right there. Or you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/Gamecock Pod Daily, all lowercase, no spaces. If that still doesn't work, just get on Google and Google Gamecock Pod Daily. That'll get you there. You can sign up. You'll love it. I guarantee it. Appreciate everybody in the chat box, everybody that's listening live, and everybody that will listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Give us a 5-star review. That way you'll be alerted as soon as I drop who the guests are going to be on Gamecock Pod Live. And you'll get, you can, once you become a member of Gamecock Pod Daily, you can copy and paste the RSS feed into your favorite podcast app, and it'll drop right in. Not only will you get an email alert from Patreon, but if you're on Apple or Spotify, you'll get an alert and it'll pop right in your favorite podcasting app. So for John Whittle, Jordan Kaye, for Craig, who's always in the chat box, and everybody else, this is Keith Allsep saying, God bless, go Gamecocks. And aren't you glad we are less than 10 days away from the start of Gamecock preseason camp? And I think more recruiting good news is on the way. So until next week or until tomorrow, this is Keith Allsep saying, go Gamecocks. I'm out of here.